4 people are floating behind the moon right now. No signal, no contact, no way to call for help. And in about 6 hours, they're going to hit Earth's atmosphere at a speed that has never been survived before. Not once, not ever. Hey, quick question before we go any further. Where in the world are you watching this from? Drop it in the comments right now. I'm genuinely curious. Because people all over this planet are watching 4 humans do something that hasn't happened in over 50 years. And what those 4 people are about to experience, one moment in particular, is something so strange, so specific, so utterly unlike anything the Apollo crews went through that when I tell you at the end of this video, you're going to want to go back and watch this whole thing again. I promise you that. So stay with me until the very end, because that moment is the whole point of this story. But to understand it, we need to go back, not to 1969, to a room in Florida. 4 people, a countdown, and a rocket that hadn't carried humans in over half a century. April 9th, 2025, Kennedy Space Center. The Space Launch System sits on the pad generating 8.8 million pounds of thrust. That is more power than any rocket ever used to carry humans off this planet. And on top of it, inside a capsule called Orion, 4 people are strapped in and waiting. Commander Reed Wiseman, pilot Victor Glover, mission specialist Christina Koch, and mission specialist Jeremy Hansen. Now here's the first thing you need to understand about this crew. Apollo sent 12 men to the moon. All of them were white. All of them were American. All of them were men. Not because NASA made some deliberate choice to exclude everyone else. It's because the pipeline that produced military test pilots in the 1960s was already exclusionary before NASA even got involved. The program reflected the world it came from. Artemis 2 doesn't. Victor Glover is the first person of color to travel beyond low Earth orbit. Christina Koch is the first woman. Jeremy Hansen is the first non-American. He's Canadian, included because of a treaty signed in 2020 that formalized Canada's role in the Artemis program. These 4 people are not just flying a mission. They are the first image of deep space exploration that actually looks like the species doing the exploring. And they launched into a completely different vehicle than Apollo ever offered. The Apollo command module gave 3 astronauts about 210 cubic feet of livable space. That is the size of a large closet. 3 grown men sealed inside a closet for up to 2 weeks. The Orion capsule gives its 4-person crew 330 cubic feet, still tight, still claustrophobic, but it also has something Apollo never had, a hygiene bay with doors that close, a toilet that works like the one on the International Space Station, urine and feces collected separately, processed properly, and handled with something the Apollo crews never once experienced during a mission: privacy. The Apollo astronauts used adhesive plastic bags, taped to their bodies, used in full view of each other, then sealed and stored inside the same cabin they lived in for the rest of the mission. Nearly every Apollo astronaut who has ever spoken honestly about spaceflight calls it one of the worst parts. The Artemis 2 crew will never know that particular misery. And honestly, if that was the only improvement over 53 years, it might still have been worth it. But it is far from the only improvement. Let's talk about what this spacecraft can actually do, because this is where things start to get genuinely strange. Orion's flight computers are roughly 20,000 times faster than the ones that flew Apollo to the moon. The Apollo guidance computer had about 72 kilobytes of memory. A greeting card that plays music when you open it has more processing power than that. Orion runs 4 independent computers simultaneously, each one 400 times faster than the computers on the space shuttle. The entire cockpit is digital. Glass screens, software interfaces, real-time trajectory adjustments happening automatically. And here's the part that would have sounded like science fiction to anyone in 1972. Orion can fly itself. It proved that on Artemis 1 in 2022, when the uncrewed spacecraft completed a full lunar mission, flew around the moon, and returned to Earth entirely on its own. No pilot, no ground control making the decisions, just the spacecraft doing the mission autonomously. The Artemis 2 crew has been manually flying the spacecraft through deep space, not during docking, not during a landing, through open space, testing steering modes, evaluating how the vehicle handles when a human actively takes control. This matters because NASA is building toward a future where crews may be operating near Mars, where a communication delay of up to 20 minutes makes real-time ground support completely useless in an emergency. The crew needs to be able to fly, not just press buttons on a guided tour. Apollo astronauts were, in a very real sense, passengers. Mission control made most of the critical decisions. Artemis 2 is shifting that relationship entirely. Then there's the communication. Apollo used radio waves to talk to Houston. It worked, but the bandwidth was so narrow that transmitting a single photograph took minutes. Orion has a laser communication system, infrared light transmitting data back to Earth at speeds that would have been impossible to even discuss in the Apollo era. By day 4 of the mission, the system had already sent 100 gigabytes back to Earth, high-resolution images, near real-time video. When Christina Koch looked out Orion's window and that image appeared on screens around the world within hours, that was laser communication doing something radio never could. And what they are seeing through those windows is completely different from anything Apollo crews ever saw. Every Apollo mission that reached the moon flew approximately 70 miles above the surface, close enough to see individual craters, close enough to watch the shadow line between day and night crawl across the terrain below them. Artemis 2 doesn't fly that path. At closest approach, Orion will be about 4,600 miles from the lunar surface. That sounds like more distance, and it is, but what it gives the crew in return is something no Apollo astronaut ever had: the entire moon at once, pole to pole, filling the window. No Apollo crew at closest approach ever saw the moon as a complete disk. They always saw a strip of it, a slice of the surface rushing past below them. Artemis 2's crew will see the whole thing at once, the way you see Earth from orbit, as a single object floating in nothing. And because of the specific geometry of this trajectory, they will also see something that has never been seen by human eyes: the Orientale Basin, a massive impact crater on the transition zone between the near side and the far side of the moon, about 600 miles across. Robotic spacecraft have photographed it, orbital instruments have mapped it in detail, but no person has ever looked at it directly. The timing of Apollo's missions meant the region was always in shadow or just out of view. Artemis 2's trajectory puts it directly in front of the crew. NASA has confirmed the crew has already photographed it through Orion's windows. For the first time in history, a human being looked at a feature of the moon that only machines had ever seen before. There is also a solar eclipse coming, not the kind you see from Earth. This one happens when Earth itself blocks the sun as seen from the spacecraft's position on the far side of the moon. It will last approximately 53 minutes. No Apollo crew ever experienced it. The geometry never aligned. For the Artemis 2 crew, it wasn't planned. The physics of the flyby made it inevitable. A free bonus from orbital mechanics, a thin blue crescent of Earth slowly sliding across the face of the sun, while 4 people float in complete silence 250,000 miles from home. And before all of that, they will break a record. The farthest any human being has ever traveled from Earth is 248,655 miles. That record belongs to the Apollo 13 crew. They didn't earn it by choice. Their oxygen tank exploded. Their mission failed. The free return trajectory that carried them safely home also carried them farther from Earth than anyone had ever gone. They set the record because something went catastrophically wrong and they were just trying to survive. Now, Artemis 2 will reach approximately 252,757 miles, 4,000 miles farther. And they will get there on purpose because the mission was designed that way from the start. The emergency plan that saved 3 lives in 1970 is now the primary flight architecture of the most advanced human spaceflight mission ever flown. What was once a last resort is now the plan. Now, remember what I said at the beginning about a moment so specific, so unlike anything Apollo ever experienced, that it changes how you understand this mission entirely. We're almost there.
Here is what is going to happen. When the Artemis 2 crew comes around the far side of the moon, all communication cuts off. The moon blocks the signal. No radio, no laser link, no voice from Houston, no connection to Earth of any kind. That part is the same as Apollo. The The silence behind the moon is one of the few experiences that has not changed in 53 years. But what happens next is completely new. After the flyby, after the record is broken, after the crew has seen the Orientale Basin and watched Earth eclipse the sun, they begin the journey home. And when Orion hits Earth's atmosphere on the return, it will be traveling at approximately 25,000 miles per hour. That is faster than any crewed spacecraft has ever traveled during re-entry. Faster than Apollo, faster than the space shuttle, faster than anything that has ever carried a human being back to this planet. The heat shield will face temperatures approaching 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Superheated plasma will wrap around the vehicle and block all communication. The crew will be completely unreachable. No signal in, no signal out. They will be alone in a fireball above the Pacific Ocean, traveling at a speed no human has survived before, trusting a heat shield that already showed unexpected damage when it flew without a crew in 2022. Engineers found erosion patterns the models didn't predict. Some of them wanted a redesigned shield before anyone flew on it. NASA reviewed the data, consulted outside experts, and gave the go-ahead with the same basic design. The crew knows this. They accepted it, because that's what exploration actually is. Not the clean, inspirational version, the real version, where the engineering is not perfect, the margins are real but not infinite, and someone has to go anyway. And that is the moment I was talking about at the start. Not a view through a window, not a record on a chart. It is the moment the plasma closes around the capsule and every screen at Mission Control in Houston goes dark and silent, and 4 people are alone in the most violent atmospheric entry in human history, in a spacecraft that has never done this with people inside it, and there is nothing anyone on Earth can do but wait. Apollo crews knew that silence behind the moon, but they came home at lower speeds, lower temperatures, with a heat shield that had never raised the questions this one has. This crew will come home faster, hotter, and with more on the line than any re-entry in history. And then the parachutes open, and the capsule hits the Pacific, and airbags inflate automatically to keep it upright, another thing Apollo never had, and divers approach, and the hatch opens, and 4 people climb out into actual sunlight. Pathfinders, not conquerors. Everything they tested, the toilet, the laser communication, the flywheel in the cargo bay they've been deadlifting on in zero gravity, the heat shield, the autonomous flight systems, all of it feeds directly into the missions that follow. The lunar landing, the gateway station, and eventually the journey that makes all of this look like a short drive. Mars. Apollo proved we could leave. Artemis is learning how to stay gone. Right now, 4 people are looking out windows at a moon no human has seen up close in over 50 years, and they are not going back to repeat history. They are going forward to make it. Thanks for watching. Drop where you're watching from down below, and I'll see you in the next one.